he wanted to come to Hamilton, and let's see, I got my joke mixed up. Excuse me here. He said, "We'll come on the O&W. It's called the Old and Weary, and it would might get you here someday." Okay, so railroads. Of course, the railroads ended in 1957. By the way, here in Clinton, I mean. Okay, this is a 1907 atlas map of Franklin Springs. Notice it was called, I'm sorry, an 1874 map, excuse me. Whoops, back up here. Franklin Iron Works. The hamlet of Franklin Springs today was the center of the blast furnace that made so much ore into pig iron and whatever. And you see here, this is Route 12B. This is the Dugway Road. This is Furnace Street. You see that? I'm sorry, this is the Dugway Road. This is Post Street here. This is the Dugway Road here. This is 12B, and the tracks and the canal were parallel to each other. This is the canal, this little shaded area, and the tracks have the little cross lines on it. But if you go down Route 12B, which was called Franklin Street back then, and turn right at the intersection of Franklin and Furnace Street, today it's still there, you go down the end of the street, and you turn left, you come back out on 12B. Well, if you went straight ahead, back in the 1880s, you'd run into the blast furnace. A real big affair. I'll show you pictures in a moment. Look at all the workers' homes. Of course, back at that time, you didn't drive your car to your blast furnace. You had to walk in 1880 or 1850, so what did you do? The companies built homes near the factory or the blast furnace, like over in Clark Mills. Those many homes in Clark Mills on Pratt Ave and so forth were built by the cotton mills there for the employees to live in, because they didn't have cars back in 1870 or 1840. So these manufacturers had to provide housing. So these houses are all gone but two or three. There's a couple here and a couple here. But anyhow, there was a store, a post office, a foundry, and this was the Franklin Iron Works. And I'll talk more about that in a few minutes. Notice how they called Grant Road Nichols Street back then, and they called 12B Franklin Street. So, and here's schoolhouse number 7. Across from the Legion is this schoolhouse, one-room schoolhouse. Did anybody here go to it? No, I guess not, because you're all too young. Okay, this is what it looked like. Not a small operation, was it? Jim, could you turn off the heat, please? Where's Jim go? It's getting a little warm in here. It's not just my hot air, but when you have 100 people here, it's a little different. Thank you, Jim. Okay, I showed you a picture a minute ago, but this is the pond that was furnace, or 12B is back here. You can't see 12B in this picture. This is a view north. If you came over Furnace Street, you'd run into this. You'd see this side of the blast furnace. These are for the coal cars to drop off the limestone and the coal, and the coke or the limestone or the whatever. And then these big towers are part of the blast furnace. So it was quite a complex. A lot of brick. It was all, you know, they had to have things that were not going to burn up with all the fires in the blast furnace. Also, the kids like to swim here in the summer. See the diving board? This was probably the first Clinton pool. Okay. Now, unfortunately, these pictures that have survived, they don't have specific captions that we can read. But I believe this one here you just saw in the other picture, and where these tracks are exactly, I don't know. I assume in Franklin someplace. But it gives you an idea of the scope of the operation. It was not a small situation. It was a big operation. They had sometimes 200 to 300 employees, usually mostly men, mostly immigrants. Here's another shot of that blast furnace with the, I guess they used to cut ice on this pond after the blast furnace fell apart. So, but that's now gone, of course. It's right across from, you know where Peck's slag bed is up on 12B? Well, the slag is the residue from the iron ore blast furnace. That was the stuff they drew off and put over on Peck's field there. And it's been sold off through the years as driveway fill, basically. But slag was the byproduct of the process. And it was used, I'll talk to you later. Question over here? Well, I assume the pond was built for the blast furnace because it's a little higher than the creek. I'm not sure how they got the water up there because the creek's right next to it. But if you ever walk or look at that area, I'm not quite sure how they got that pond up there. But they did. Oh, for cooling, I suppose, in the blast furnace. It was not built for Franklin Springs kids to swim in. Here's another shot of it. Again, a substantial building. It was not just a little 50-foot high building. Again, I apologize for these pictures, but that's the best we have. And here's some of the real, looks like the executives with their hats on, doesn't it? I'm not sure if this was exactly where it was in the complex, but there's some kids here. I'm not sure what the occasion was either, but maybe, see, it closed up because of the business was very cyclical, based on the business cycle. If the economy is going full speed, they were hiring 300 people here. If they were in a depression, which happened many times in the 1800s, they would fire 300 people. So this might have been a restart, and there were different owners through the years too. So this might have been when a new owner took over at some point. I don't know. It's not captioned, so I can't enlighten you any more about this, nor about this exactly. But look at this big wheel. This is some substantial parts. They weren't small little trinkets in there. They were big things, whatever they are or were. Again, this is 4 pictures of, I assume, up on. Well, here's the blast furnace here. But look at the coal cars or the limestone cars. I'm not sure what they were. And here's the pond again. This did not come out too well, but it shows some tracks here. Here's the big tower, and this is stacks of I think maybe charcoal or lumber. I'm not quite sure. I can't see it. Okay, a few pictures there of Franklin. Now we'll turn to some more text here. So they went on and on for several years, mining on the surface or near the surface, and in 1885, they sunk the first underground shaft at Willow Hill and Brimfield Street by the Franklin Iron Manufacturing Company. The names changed. There were a lot of investors who came and went. They went bankrupt. Of course, nothing new today, I guess, but there were several different names of this thing over the years. And on Utica Street, there was some property there, the Elliott property. And the last one that we know of, this was like the second to last, was up on east of Dawes Ave on Brimfield Street. There was a shaft there because after the blast furnace closed, the Clinton Hematite Paint Company, which I'll talk about later, which was located in Franklin, they kept this one mine going to 1963. So this is the last mine, the one on east of Dawes Ave. But go back to Franklin. 1850, they began construction on this furnace, and it was to make 6 to 10 tons a day. Some of the stockholders were some prominent people at that time. Lester Barker, there's a Louisa May Barker, there's a Barker Road. He owned the hotel in Franklin, which is now used to be owned by the Phillips family. It's now just been sold. Other people who were involved as stockholders were John Elliott. He had that mine down on Utica Street. H.H. Kellogg, he was an abolitionist. He was an abolitionist and a minister. And he was an investor, a Rollin Root, a Fred Tuttle, Jonas Tower, and a T.J. Sawyer. He was a Universalist minister, by the way. But these were the original investors in the Franklin blast furnace. And Albert Munson, that's a Utica name you should recognize. Munson's been a big name, and Munson Williams Proctor. You ever heard of Munson Williams Proctor? Okay. So there was money in the Munson family back at that time, too. And Mr. Munson wrote in 1854 that the furnace is doing very well, making 12 to 14 tons a day. The United Chief, which was the predecessor to the Clinton Courier, had an editorial saying that the ore is rich as any in the country, and the supply is inexhaustible. Well, that proved out to be a lie, but yeah, you have to be a local booster. You got to boost your own. You know, we're boosting nano now, right? We're saying nano is the secret to everything up in North Utica. There, you have to promote the local situation. So, the Civil War was a big help to the economy, frankly. And after the war, they reorganized at O.B. Madison and Charles Smythe. This was sort of